Through Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world on the 12th of June of 2026. Today we have a lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, and first we will talk about the Crimean front line. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians made another attempt to attack the Zatoka bridge. As a result of attack, something was destroyed around the Zatoka bridge itself, but not the bridge. This evening we received these satellite pictures, and according to these satellite pictures, the Russians destroyed something to the northeast of the bridge. So the Russians attacked this territory. When talking about this map, so this is the exact point that was damaged by Russians. So this is the exact constructions that were attacked by Russians with Ha-59 missiles. Probably the Russians were attacking either an air defense system of the armed forces of Ukraine or the electronic warfare equipment that was established by the Ukrainians with the purpose to intercept Russian missiles and drones. As a result of attack, something was destroyed, but as of the end of the 12th of June of 2026, we don't have any update on this matter. Probably within the next hours or days, we will receive additional information, and then we will discuss this situation once again. But despite the fact that the Russians didn't attack the bridge, the Zatoka bridge itself, now it's obviously that the Russians are tasked to destroy the bridge completely without any chances for the Ukrainians to repair it and to restore it. The Russians, I would like to remind you that the Russians attacked the Zatoka bridge as a retaliatory strike because the Ukrainians during the previous days were bombing and attacking the bridges through the northern parts of Crimea. As we can see, according to the latest satellite pictures, the Russians began stabilizing situation, stabilizing measures in this area. I would like to remind you that several days ago, the Ukrainians attacked the bridge to the south of the settlement of Changar. The bridge was damaged, and today we received first fresh pictures where we can see the current situation. So this bridge that goes, which is located on top of this picture, was damaged by the Ukrainians, and the Russians restricted access to this area. At the same time, we see a very big traffic through the pontoon bridge that goes below. So this pontoon bridge, the Russians use for commercial purposes. As you can see just through this picture, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 trucks that were trying to cross this area using this pontoon bridge. This is the first thing. But another thing is that the Russians are not able to use this bridge fast. So as you can see, there is a traffic. There are lots of trucks on this side of the bridge waiting for their turn to cross this area, and this is a very important situation. But from the other side, we see that the Russians right now are trying to create a third bridge in this area, which will go below the railway bridge, and this is going to be the most southern pontoon bridge of this area. Most likely the Russians will try to use the situation with the purpose to allow trucks to go further in the northwestern direction and in the southeastern direction, in the direction of Crimea and in the direction of Kherson. At the same time, lots of satellite pictures were published from the area between Crimea and Kherson, and we can see lots of trucks that are waiting for their turn to cross this area, which means that in coming days, the Ukrainians, or maybe even during the upcoming night between the 12th and the 13th of June of 2026, the Ukrainians may try to attack this concentration of trucks with drones, and this can lead to unpredictable and very probably bad consequences for Crimea and for the logistics of Crimea. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Zaporozhye direction, where the clashes between the Russians and the Ukrainians are intensifying. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians attacked the city of Zaporozhye significantly. The sources reported that the Russians attacked another warehouse or another logistic hub of the armed forces of Ukraine. In this video, we can see a building that was completely destroyed as a result of the Russian Giran strike. So in this video, we can see the consequences. We can see the fire, and we can see fire crews of Ukraine that were trying to extinguish the fire. So another warehouse was destroyed as a result of attack. Furthermore, the Russians were attacking the territory along the line of combat contact. We received lots of videos of how Russians were using aviation to bomb and attack positions of the armed forces of Ukraine through the settlements of Yurkovka, Tavriskaya, and Orekhov. But at the same time, we start receiving very important updates from the settlement of Ternovate. Today, several pro-Russian sources and several pro-Ukrainian sources reported that as a result of a counter-offensive operation, the armed forces of Ukraine managed to answer the settlement of Ternovate using lots of forces, and currently there are very heavy clashes for this territory. Furthermore, several pro-Russian sources have already adjusted their maps and they have colored the territory of the settlement of Ternovate under complete Ukraine control, which means that the Ukrainians began another counter-offensive operation through the eastern Zaporozhye flank, and as a result of this counter-offensive operation, it seems that Ukrainians managed to recapture the settlement of Ternovate. In coming days, most likely we will receive additional updates on this matter. So as you can see, the Ukrainians are trying to do everything they can with the purpose not to allow the Russians to continue their offensive operation in the direction of the city of Zaporozhye. We see that the Ukrainians are trying to get the initiatives in their hands.
I dag, der skal vi ud og køre i den her Folkevogn ID3.
Volkswagen ID3 er en familiebil i Mellem.
Now let's move further and let's talk about the Druzhkivka-Dobropolye direction, about the Dobropolye direction. During the previous 12 hours, during the previous night, we received lots of updates that the Russians continued attacking the main logistic lines of the armed forces of Ukraine along M30 road, and the Ukrainians used this M30 road to support their contingent in the area of the settlement of Dobropolye. At the same time, the Russians intensified their activities through the villages to the south of the settlement of Dobropolye. As you can see, lots of updates were published during the previous 24 hours from this area. For example, in this video, we can see a temporary deployment point of the FPV drone operators of the armed forces Ukraine that was attacked and destroyed by Russians. And in this video, we can see how Russians were bombing with artillery the settlement of Vadianska. So it seems that the Russians are tasked to begin offensive operation in the direction of all these villages with the purpose to attack these territories from many directions and from many sides, with the purpose to take these territories under complete control and to finish the preparation before the battle of the city of Dobropolye itself. Now let's talk about the Druzhkivka direction. During the previous 24 hours, the biggest number of updates we received exactly from this area. First of all, and the most important, is the situation through the city of Konstantinovka. We have already discussed the situation, just few words, and we will finish, we will continue. First of all, the map, as you can see, has been adjusted since the 10th of June of 2026. This is the end of the 10th of June. This is the end of the 11th of June. The Russians improved their position through the western Konstantinovka flank. The settlement of Roskoshne was captured by Russians. The Russians began advancing towards the Novoselovka micro district, which is the northwestern parts of the city, and we have changes through the micro district of Nakhalovka. And furthermore, pro-Russian sources published this video where we can see dozens of flags that were raised through the central, western, southern, and the southwestern parts of the settlement. Dozens of flags were raised, which means that the Russians have a very strong control over the territory, and the Russians continue advancing. And most of the military experts came to conclusion that the Konstantinovka defenses have collapsed, and the Russians most likely in coming 2 weeks will be able to finish the battle for this territory, and then from these positions the Russians will continue advancing further towards the Druzhkivka agglomeration, and the battle for Druzhkivka begins. Another important thing is that with the updates from the territory of Konstantinovka, we start receiving lots of updates from the southwestern Druzhkivka direction. First of all, we have a video that confirmed Russian control over the territory between Tarskoye and Shakhova. In this video, we can see Russian troops that were moving through this area, which means that Russians have strong control over the territory, and most likely the Russians have some positions even further to the north. And based on this video, we have adjusted the map, we have colored this gray zone under complete Russian control. Furthermore, today the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, as well as several pro-Russian sources, stated that as a result of clashes, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly through the settlement of Period. Based on these reports, we have adjusted the map as well. And we start receiving first updates that the Russians began attacking the settlements further to the north with FPV drones, which means that the Russians intensified their offensive operation in this area as well. And summarizing everything, we see that now the Russians began advancing in the direction of the settlement of Druzhkivka from the southwest, and the Russians began this offensive operation almost at the same time with the Russian activity through the city of Konstantinovka. As for the territory between, as for this pocket, the Russians began bombing and attacking this territory with aviation and with FPV drones drones, which means that the Russians are trying to pin down the Ukrainians in this area and not to allow them to retreat towards the settlement of Druzhkivka itself. As for the settlement of Druzhkivka, today we start receiving first updates and first videos, and here we can see that the Ukrainians managed to create layered defenses through the city itself. Here we have barbed wire in the central part of the settlement, so the Ukrainians are trying to fortify the settlement as much as possible. The Ukrainians are trying to prepare the city before the beginning of the major battle for the city, because the battle for the city of Druzhkivka means the beginning of the battle, means the beginning of the final battle for the Slaviansk-Druzhkivka agglomeration itself, for the Donbas arc, for the heart of the Donbas arc offensive operation. Now let's move further with the significant activity through the Druzhkivka direction. We see that we have a very big activity through the Slaviansk direction. We have a lot of videos from this area. The Russians continue bombing and attacking the main strongholds of the armed forces of Ukraine to the east of the city of Slaviansk. The Russians continue attacking and destroying the logistics between Slaviansk and Liman. The Russians continue advancing through the city of Liman itself, and we believe that within the next 5-10 days we will receive significant changes on the ground through the city of Liman, and probably within the next 5-10 days the Russians will announce complete control over the territory, and this will open the Russians an operational space towards the settlement of Slaviansk from the northeast. So this is the battle, this is the main battle of the Slaviansk-Kramatorsk direction, the 11th military corps of the armed forces of Ukraine in this area. We have the biggest concentration of troops from the armed forces of Ukraine in this direction. We have tens of FPV drone operators in this area from the armed forces of Ukraine. We have artillery forces, we have air mobile brigades, we have mechanized brigade, we have infantry brigades from the armed forces of Ukraine, we have a defense brigade, and so on. The Russians managed to concentrate thousands of troops, maybe even dozens of thousands of troops in this area as well, which means that the major battle for the Donbas begins. This battle will last long. It will take months before the battle ends, but sooner or later the battle will finish. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation through the northern directions. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians continued bombing and attacking the city of Kharkiv. More videos were published on this matter. The Russians began bombing and attacking the city of Kharkiv several days ago, probably somewhere a week ago, and the beginning of bombardment of the city of Kharkiv started almost at the same time with the beginning of the ground and the major offensive operation in the direction of the city from the north, through the settlement of Kazachye Lopan, and through the northeast along the river of Volcha. During the previous 24 hours, additional changes through the river of Volcha were recorded. The Russians, as you can see, began an assault operation on the territory of the settlement of Mala Takmachka. The Russians right now are trying to answer the settlement from the west, but due to the current configuration, we believe that Ukrainians will not be able to hold their positions a very long period of time, and the Ukrainians will not be able to show fierce resistance in this area because there is a very big gap between positions along the river of Volcha and main positions between the cities of Bielый Kolodец and Veliki Burluk, which means that Ukrainians basically will not be able to supply this contingent, and so that is why we expect that the battle for the last part of the Volcha river would be much faster than the battle for the foothold along the river of Volcha between the city of Volchansk and Bielый Kolodец. We're talking about this territory.
Jeg må indrømme, jeg går efter udseendet. Jeg skal bare have en, der er lækker og godt pumpet, men også en, der er god.
Another important area is the northern directions, the city of Sumy. The Russians also attacked the settlement, and we start receiving more and more reports how Russians enter the city of Sumy, the airspace of the city of Sumy, using drones. In this video we can see how the Russians were attacking gas stations, warehouses, different big malls with FPV drones, and as a result of these attacks, all these objects of energy infrastructure and commercial infrastructure were destroyed and damaged by Russians. Just through this video, we could see how Russians were attacking this gas station through the northern parts of the settlement and this big mall, this big logistic hub with drones. As a result of attacks, these two facilities were damaged by Russians. Furthermore, the Russians intensified their attacks through the most northern parts of Sumy and Chernigov region. The settlement of Voronezh was attacked by Russians, and during the day we have this, let's say, explosion. We have fire anomaly along railways. Most likely the Ukrainians were trying to bring additional reinforcements. Probably the Russians also attacked another objects of energy infrastructure. Furthermore, the Russians continue bombing and destroying positions and strongholds of the armed forces of Ukraine between the settlements of Bachevsk and Ulanovo. During the previous days, we were talking that currently there are very heavy clashes for both settlements. The Russians are trying to force the Ukrainians to fall back from this area, and now the Russians are attacking this territory with aviation and with Toslam tower systems. In this video, we can see an attack carried out by the Russians and very heavy explosion. It seems that the Russians most likely will announce additional progress on the ground through these territories. And of course, the city of Chernigov, during the previous 24 hours, additional explosions and additional attacks were recorded. Several objects of energy infrastructure and several warehouses were destroyed by Russians. The Ukrainians also attacked deep inside of the territory of Russia, and I would like to remind you that today the Russians celebrates the Russian Day. And during this, the Russian Day, the Ukrainians launched hundreds of drones deep inside of the territory of Russia, and we received lots of updates on this matter. The Ukrainians attacked a power station on the territory of the city of Simferopol, Crimea. The Ukrainians attacked the settlement of Tatalyati, and the Ukrainians attacked a chemical plant on the territory of the city, dealing significant damage, and right after the Ukrainians attacked the chemical plant, a fire broke out. Also, the Ukrainians attacked the settlement of Nizhny-Kamensk, and as a result of attack, the Ukrainians managed to deal significant damage to the chemical plant on the territory of the city. And as we can see, the Ukrainians continue bombing and attacking deep inside of the territory of Russia. And the most important thing is that the Ukrainians attacked the central part of Russia during this day, during the Russian Day. And the Russians have already promised the Ukrainians that in coming days between the 11th and the 14th of June of 2026, the Russians would use the Oreshnik system. Information is available about the possible use of up to 2 medium-range ballistic missiles Oreshnik from the Kapustin Yar range within the next 4 hours. Some sources are saying within the next 4 hours. Some sources reported about the gap, about the period between the 11th and the 14th of June of 2026. One thing is clear, that today the Russians will finish celebrating the Russian Day, and starting from the 30th of June of 2026, we can expect that the Russians will attack the territory of Ukraine using hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles. Most likely tomorrow or during the upcoming night between the 12th and the 13th of June of 2026, the Russians will use hundreds of drones to attack the territory of Ukraine, and the Russians will attack the city of Kiev most likely, the city of Kharkiv most likely, and the cities like Dnipro and Zaporozhye. Most likely the Russians will not attack further in the direction of the western parts of Ukraine. They will limit themselves just with the central and the eastern part. But there are going to be lots of attacks, lots of missiles involved during this massive attack that is approaching. And that's it for today.